Well, that being the case, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Gilead's Sword and Sorcery Sketchbook Live, where we are going to paint a kitten. And let's see. I don't know why I have that saved to my screen twice. But we're going to paint a kitten today, and I'm just going to get going here pretty quick. Now, quite some time ago, I did my sketch in this sketchbook before we moved to this place. And that is significant because it was a very disorganized move. Lots of things, wound up in boxes and didn't really know where they were. And so, I've done things like I've got another sketchbook that I've been painting in, and the reason I've been painting in that one is because I'm disorganized and I didn't know where this one was. So I've got paintings we've been working on in two different books. I did the sketch right on the paper. Some of my earlier paintings in this sketchbook, I had, pardon me, I had done this, done a coat of gesso. You can see where I got this painter's tape, and there's some white. Gesso is like a very thick, opaque, white paint. It's very it's full of plaster, at least traditionally, and very, very absorbent. So it's what you put on your canvases and whatnot to get them ready to have a painting put on. And so whatever they make it out of these days, it's like an acrylic paint. I did that. But then I decided, I don't need it. I can do my paint sketch directly on the paper, and I did some like that, and didn't much like the result. However, I had already done a number of sketches on ungessoed paper. And then we moved, and I packed my sketchbook away, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so now I've got the sketchbook out, and there's sketches in there without the gesso, and I know that I kind of prefer to do the gesso first. So when I got this sketchbook out, which has been since we moved, but not, just the other day or anything. It was a while back still. When I got the sketchbook out, I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and gesso over those sketches. So I can see the sketch through the gesso. I rather suspect that you cannot in this video. So my first instinct, my first desire is to just jump right in there with a wash, like a brown underpainting. Just jump right in with an underpainting and do that, and then start in with all the other paints. I'm pretty sure that would just obliterate my sketch entirely, and I would never be able to see it, and I might as well just do something entirely different. I'll get a blank page by that point. So I didn't want to do that. So I'm going in and kind of reestablishing my sketch in purple, violet. establishing my sketch, and then I'll go in and do my underpainting. When this is dry, which is going to take forever. Yeah, it's pretty close to dry. So this is sort of an underpainting, and then we're going to do an underpainting over my underpainting. If that doesn't make sense, well, you know, they say those artists, they're all crazy and they don't make any sense. That commentary you just heard in the background was Lux the cat, who's probably a bit annoyed that I'm painting a picture of some other cat. This is Mino. I caught a very, well, it was a very cute moment. I would love to say it's a very cute photograph. It's actually not a great photograph because I don't take great photographs. Sometimes just by accident I do, but my camera's not great, so I don't take great photographs. But it was a cute moment where Mino and his mommy were taking a nap on the bed, and I took a snapshot, and it's honestly not the most flattering photo of either of them as such things go, but I can make a decent little paint sketch here with Mino, and Stellar will probably appreciate me not trying to include her in this process. Okay. So, I don't know if I've just done something visually confusing that's going to have you scratching your heads and going, what is he doing? I hope so, because that will, you know, just add to the greatness of the mystery. Hi, Lucas. Hi. But yes, it's not all about you today. Darn it. Gosh darn it. Here it is. Well, no, you can't walk away from me. If I was going to pick you up and put you on camera, you can't get your moment of fame by walking across the room. Sometimes I think cats don't get technology. Anyways, this is Lux the cat. This is not who we're painting at the moment, but if we get very far, it will be Lux. Today, tomorrow, potato, probably not tomorrow. I'll warn you right now, I'm probably not doing a video tomorrow. I've got a medical thing in the morning and a work thing in the afternoon. So, most likely not. I'm going in for my second round. I don't know what they call it. They're just shooting lidocaine into my nerves. Directly into my nerves. And that's not particularly supposed to be good for me. It's they're doing it because they want to ascertain those are the nerves that we need to do an operation on. So they don't want to do the operation on the wrong nerves. So my back always hurts, so they want to numb some nerves, and then I keep a pain log and say, yeah, my back doesn't hurt in the usual way. It hurts because there's a bunch of needle holes in my back, but in the usual fashion of things, it doesn't hurt. And then I've already done that once. They're making me do it twice. The insurance company is making me do it twice. And I'll do my pain log, and they'll submit the report to the insurance company. And the insurance company will find some other excuse to mess around with us. And ultimately, hopefully, they'll then do an operation. It's a fairly minor thing, but it's a fairly minor thing for them to do. It's a fairly major result if it's successful, because it won't hurt for a while. It only lasts about a year and a half. They go in and with gosh, I don't know what they use. Laser beams or a lightsaber or something. They go in and they burn the nerve, and then it won't nerve anymore for about a year and a half, and then it'll start healing back together, and I've got to go do it again. Whole process over again. Well, I don't know. At that point, they might say, "Oh, we already know it's the correct nerve. We did it once already." I don't know. Anyway, am I worried about it? I'm always worried about medical procedures, but I've been putting up with some pretty serious discomfort for a pretty long time, so I'm ready. All right. Let me put this over here for the moment. I can well imagine that anyone who's looking at that is thinking to themselves, what are you thinking? And so, good. Good, I'm glad. That makes me very happy. I squeezed out some cobalt blue, some neutral gray. We're just doing stuff. It's almost random. Genuinely, it's almost random. I am not a person with a great education in color theory, and I don't care. So I'm going to... I've already got some violet, cobalt blue, neutral gray. This is something else. Unbleached titanium. Alright. There you are. This is burnt umber. I'll probably come back for some of these and possibly wonder why I use some of the other ones. Because the background is all reddish violet, I'm going to put some green. Mino's basically gray and white, so that's what we're going to achieve. All those darkish areas are gray. In the photo, however, the gray skews towards purple. When you're not an artist, you think, well, that's a crazy statement, until I can convince you to actually look. No, zoom in. Zoom your camera in and really, really look. Isolate a little spot. Do this thing with your finger where you have to, there's just a little opening, or find something else that has a little opening in it, like a card with a hole punched in it, and just isolate a spot and say, okay, what color is that right there? Just isolate a spot and study that color. So if you're going to paint that thing, you don't want to paint the thing because you're going to say, oh, I know what color that is. He's gray and he's white. Well, the paper's white. What am I going to do? Well, you're not going to do that. You're going to isolate that color because his white fur is in the shadow. And so what color is that shadow? It isn't white. It isn't black. What color is it? So you're going to find there's purples, there's greens, there's blues, there's colors in those shadows. All right. But there is white. We're going to use some white paint. All right, but we're not going to wind up with a pure white cat. Even if it was appropriate, it would sure be boring. Terribly boring. We don't want to do that. All right. I'm picking up a wee bit of blue, throwing it down in there. I accidentally spilled some white paint into my violets. I'm going to move that over. Some blue, some violet. I'm gonna pick up some more blue. The blanket that he's laying on is what I'm going for next. I'm going to sort of carve him out from the background in a way. Just brush strokes all around him. And then there's white for those folds in the blanket. I didn't achieve that folds in the blanket effect very well, but that's alright. I'm gonna focus more on I'm gonna focus more on getting my background in. What the background looks like and any details in the background are really not important to me here. I want to draw my cat. So that's the main thing. Draw the cat. The cat is always the main thing. They would tell you. In fact, my cat did come in here and tell us that very thing just a few minutes ago. Rather than fuss a lot with the folds, I'm just gonna imply that there's some such thing going on here with brush strokes. As he laid on the bed, the sheet kind of folded towards him, creased towards him. So there are sort of radiating lines coming away from him, which kind of, so that they sort of point in his direction and reiterate the fact that he is in fact the center of the universe, and this is the way it should be. So that's good. We've got him like that. Sometimes when I do an underpainting in purple or whatnot, I really like it, and it was just intended to be an underpainting. It wasn't intended to be the color that I used. It was intended to be kind of the foil to the colors that I was going to use. The thing that color stood against, was contrasted to. And but I wind up liking the underpainting color and going, oh, I want to leave that. And so I'm going to deliberately avoid doing that today. And just follow through and say, okay, what you meant to do is use this purple color for an underpainting, and that's what we're going to do. There's a lot of that purple showing through in the background. I love that. A lot of it's going to show through on the cat, and I intend to love that as well. I don't love it yet because I haven't done it yet, but I intend to love it, and so no problem there, no conflict. In fact, I'm going to mix some more violet with my white. Come up in here. All right. I want to go for something a little bit darker. So I'm mixing my dark green, my burnt umber, I don't know what it does, I think that's Hooker's green, burnt umber, and some of that violet. Tried to avoid picking up any of the white. And I think this is going to be Mino's gray spots color, by and large. Of course, different parts of his body are facing towards the light, facing away from the light, so it's not going to be a uniform color all around. It can't be. It's impossible, but it will be the base color, what we call the local color. We in the biz like I say, the green that I put here I largely did because I wanted a foil against all the reddishness in the background. Green opposite of red. Mino's spots are not 100% symmetrical. He's an off-kilter sort of cat. We have these kittens. Some people say they're not kittens, they're cats, because they're more than 2 years old. Listen, buddy, they're kittens. They will always be my kittens. And we have these kittens, and they are very, very, very loving. They're the lovingest animals I've ever known in my life. And they're all like that. And Mino's not like that. So the kittens, I have no trouble telling you why I love them. I love them because they love me. How can you not love somebody that loves you so much? They love me. And I love them. They love everybody. But they love me. Mino doesn't love me. I don't know I don't know why I love Mino. It's just one of those irrational things that people do. But I do. He's my boy. He's grumpy. He's old. He's fat. But enough about me. Mino. He's our guy. So, he's starting to take form a little bit. I don't know how much still you can appreciate that it's beginning to look like a cat. Maybe you're still saying, I don't know what you're doing. I can only enjoy that fact while standing here, sitting here, in the confidence that it's all going to come together and you're going to go, wow, huh, how'd you do that? It was a bunch of blotches of paint and suddenly it's a cat. Hopefully that moment is coming. Otherwise, well, I made a bunch of blotches of paint. And we need some of these paint blotches to dry just a little bit. It only takes a few minutes, but we're going to let them dry. Stellar is here. Kevin says, will take forever to dry. Yeah, it's almost dry. Well, it's Arizona. And John's here. Stellar says, hi, Lux. Test procedure number 2. Oh yeah, the insurance thing. Yes, health insurance companies, the experts in healthcare. Yeah, yeah, healthcare, but I find myself on the very brink of being a fat old man, and I kind of need my health care these days. Okay, Stellar says they will always be my kittens. Absolutely. Mino's a grumpy boy. Kevin says my shadow Gwen is 13, still acts like a kitten, and she loves the origami butterflies, or rather loves tearing them apart. Oh, I put mine high up on a shelf, but I don't anticipate a long life for them. I anticipate a happy life for them, but not a long one. So, and they may add to somebody else's happiness as they get torn to shreds, and I guess that's kind of okay. So, such is our thus. Yeah, that's pretty much true. Yesterday we met Dee Dee, the scary bird, at the store. Dee Dee the chickadee. So tomorrow I will go have my procedure, my test, and not not the actual procedure, unfortunately. The test, and then and you might think, oh, you need to rest up. Nope. I'm not going to rest up. I'm going to go to work and abuse my body and give it exactly the amount of rest that I deprive it basically of the amount of rest that it needs. And that's actually as per doctor's orders. I've got to go out and do abusive things to myself, basically, in order to know that something effective is happening. So, you know, I've got to do things that ought to hurt. And go, oh, that doesn't hurt. I did that last time. It worked. I went, wow, that would normally hurt like hell. And then I did it. It didn't hurt. I reported that in my log, and I got up the next morning and went, ah! And so that's what's going to happen tomorrow. The next day. But anyway, it's all part of our process. I got this book about painting, and of course there's many different ways to approach a painting, but this person's approach is to try as much as possible to completely ignore what you're drawing and just paint the little bits. You make the observation that there's a triangular patch of this color, and you just paint that little patch of color, and make sure you put the next patch of whatever color in the right spot, so that the picture doesn't fall apart. But rather than try to paint a cat shape, you just paint the colors, one right after the other, and ultimately you will have a collection of color shapes that collectively are a cat shape. That makes any sense. If it doesn't, it's just one of those weird things that artists say. But anyway, that's his approach to things. And at one point in the book he said, it actually helps a lot that I've got terrible eyesight. I can just take my glasses off and paint without my glasses, because all I'm going to see are just shapes and blobs and colors. Not going to see any details, not going to get hung up on any details. I'm just going to paint shapes and blobs and colors, put my glasses back on and go, look, it's a field with flowers and there's cows walking around. I didn't even know there were cows out there. I may be hyperbolizing, but that's the concept. So that is perhaps the concept of what we're doing here. I'll throw in a little bit more blue and a little bit more purple. I seem to have used all of that up. I've mentioned before that I've had these little tubes of paint for long enough that they're in danger of going bad. They're in danger of drying up in the tube or whatever. So, not being careful with them. I'm not. Not worrying about wasting my paint. It's not a waste. It's a use. It's an investment. It's a whatever. Okay, this tan color, whatever it was they called it titanium, unbleached titanium. It's got a little bit of yellow to it, and yellow kind of comes forwards in your eye, as an illusion. Yellow moves towards you, and is going to be the opposite of the shadows, which are bluish and purplish. So yellow works very well as the color for things that are the most towards us, which doesn't necessarily mean towards the bottom of the page, because he's three-dimensional, so it towards us this way as well. Just what shapes are coming at you. We're going to have some of these yellow tones. Be very careful about where we're going to put them, because if you put them anywhere, they're everywhere, they're meaningless, so you got to put them where they mean something. You got to place them carefully, and because you've placed them carefully, they mean something. So a little bit about paintbrushes. This paintbrush is small and it's flat. And the expression for that, if you're looking for it in the art supply store, it's described as a small flat. So I hope that was helpful. Brushes come in all shapes, and like, oh, there's small details here. I need a tiny little brush. And in fact, you might say, oh, well, what you're doing there, you're using that big brush with a certain level of confidence. I'll work up to that. No, if I can give you any little piece of advice, it's work up to using the little brushes. Start with using the biggest, clumsiest brush you can find. At least this big. And do the whole painting with that if you can. You will, because you don't want to hang up. Okay, there's so many things about painting where you can go, oh, but I didn't do that thing perfectly. Oh, but how about this? I didn't do this quite the way I wanted. It didn't quite come out the way I wanted. And you can keep going back and keep going back and keep going back and keep going back. Until you do what I did yesterday. I have a friend who's involved in some organization that is raising money for something, and needed art donated. And I had this landscape painting that I worked on a couple of times here on this very channel, and I've gone back to it and pecked at it and gone back to it and pecked at it and then taken it out and gone, ugh, that's not right. And it's just there's things about it that are obvious, and a really experienced painter is going to go, well, keep practicing, and because there are things about it that are just not right. Well, I donated it. That way, I will stop looking at it. And she was very happy with it, and feels confident that they'll probably sell it. So that'll make me happy. If they make $1 for it, I don't care. If they raise $1 and use money for charity, and they've gotten rid of this painting, and I've it's not that it's a bad painting. It's not a bad painting. I don't hate it. I don't dislike the thing at all. It was a fun thing, but it's something that I could high center on and stay high centered on it for the rest of my life, or I could go paint a picture of my cat, and so I'd rather go paint a picture of my cat. So that's the thing. Use a large brush instead of a small brush, and in that way you can go paint a picture of your cat, which is what it's all about, as I believe we have pointed out earlier in this video. of his fur is medium gray. Um, and so it's going to be dark where there's shadows, and it's going to be light where the sunlight comes through the window and catches on his fur. So even though I'm painting some of the darkest spots on his body, in places I'm painting that very, very lightly because there's light on it. Particularly if you wish to listen to Kevin McPherson, the painter that I was referring to earlier. If you wish to listen to him and do patches of color rather than doing a very careful drawing of this cat and penciling in every detail and then trying to squeeze some color in between your pencil strokes, the way many people try to begin a painting. If you want to do that, if you want to do the paint patches of color, well then this kind of brush is probably the best friend for that. A very good tool for assisting you in busting your way out of a habit of a lifetime of doing things quite differently. Alright, so is that exactly like my little Mino? No. No. It's not. But I guess we can say this captures the essence of Mino. It is the essence of Mino. And he's very, very sweet little kitty when he's asleep. Not so much the rest of the time, but when he's asleep. Another habit, a painter habit, to learn, and it's not just a habit to learn to do, it's a habit to learn to break because you've learned to do otherwise, is to hold your brush like this rather than like this. Again, and you'll note that I don't always do that, but I do sometimes, and it's the breaking the habit of a lifetime. it is a better way to hold your brush. Because you're not drawing, you're putting. Not writing a letter with a pen. In a way, you're just taking paint and troweling it on. So it's not a bad thing to think of it as a trowel. You know, like if you were out there painting the side of your house, you probably wouldn't be holding the trowel like this. You'd probably have a handle and going, and so that's more or less what your hand should be doing when you're doing this kind of work. Trowel it on. Break the habits of a lifetime. I was reading yesterday about Edwin Collins because, you know, that's the sort of thing you do. Edwin Collins had a hit song in the early 90s called A Girl Like You. Never met a girl like you before. Anyway, he had a couple other hits, but that might be the only one that you remember at the moment. But he had been in a band called Orange Juice back in the punk rock days. Anyhow, he had a stroke at some point, and there were 4 things that he could say. He had that aphasia that people get and they can't say stuff. And he could say yes. He could say no. He could say his wife's name. And he could say the possibilities are endless. And he could say those 4 things. I find that endlessly fascinating. And so I'm going to write my name one of the possibilities is that I just misquoted, but anyways, I'm going to leave you with break the habit of a lifetime. Use a big brush. Hold it differently. Paint your cat. The possibilities are endless. Everybody, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I will not be here tomorrow, and I will probably see you the next day as far as I know. Have a great night. Bye-bye.